Hello everybody, Mark Engman, Blue Spruce Solutions. We're continuing the exploration of lead around homes, this one in soils around my house. Now, first, what does it mean to have lead contaminated soil? Note that lead exists naturally in soils at concentrations of 10 to 50 parts per million. That's the background level. States set their own standards. In DC, bare soil of 400 parts per million is lead contaminated. Also in Virginia, 400 parts per million, and Maryland, 200 parts per million. And why is this important? Well, you can track dust and soil into the house. It can get into your lungs or into your stomach, and that's how you get lead poisoned. And just remember why we're doing this, because, lead is bad for kids. It affects their health and their systems for the rest of their lives.
Hi folks, so just to show you real quick how this is done, the great thing about the XRF is it takes pretty much instant readings from the top couple of inches of soil. Takes about 20 to 30 seconds a shot. The most important thing is to make sure that you scrape away any covering like mulch or rocks or whatever to get down to bare soil. And then I usually like to put a little protector of some kind around my XRF reader so that I don't get any soil on that and spoil subsequent readings. So all you do is you just take the thing down, put it on the ground, and shoot it and wait 20-30 seconds, and boom, your result pops up. So that's what I did around the house here.
So here we go. This is in our backyard right off our patio right next to the house, mostly for the dog actually. So we measured a couple of places here, and this came up really low, which is great, 17 and 33 parts per million. Here's another section in our backyard, again mostly for the dog. Measured, it's a little higher at 97. Here is our side garden. Now this came up high, 487. That's over the legal limit. Why? Well, I think because it's next to the alley. Places next to alleys and roadways can have higher lead contamination. Luckily, this is covered in mulch and blocked by plants, so it's not a problem. Okay, now to my front yard. This is the front of the house. This is the drip line, the 3-foot area in front of the wall. You can see that these are pretty high, way over the legal limit. Why? Well, this house was originally painted in the front. Probably lead-based paint. It was stripped years ago, but the dust settles down there into the soil. It's protected by the hedge, but I really need to cover it. So now we move to the front yard, and in my front yard I took one reading right in the middle of the yard, and it shocked me. That's 9,000 parts per million. That's almost 1% lead. I kind of freaked out about that, so I took a bunch of other measurements around the front yard. They'll pop up in a second here. There we go. And you can see that some of them were higher, but nothing was as high as that particular reading. So it's a mystery. Why would that one section be so high? And I checked it several times. So one possibility, you see where that rock is, that covers a cleanout pipe that comes from the sewer. Those pipes are either lead or contain lead joints. Another possibility where this line is where our water service line was dug out 20 years ago. It was lead and replaced with a copper line. The water company just took the old dirt out, replaced the line, and put the new dirt in. Possibly that was contaminated. So it's hard to say what the problem was, but the fact is it's pretty high and I need to do something. So clearly there are sections around my house that have pretty high levels of lead in the soil. And I have to express some frustration about that. I mean, I consider myself relatively well informed and sort of intelligent. People might argue with that, but the fact is I had no idea. We had our house tested for lead years and years ago, but nobody ever suggested, and I never thought about getting the soil around the house tested. Well, it turns out some of that soil has pretty high lead contamination. So now that we know that, what do we do about it? You have to find a way to either avoid or cover that contaminated soil. You can dig it out and replace it. That's obviously pretty expensive and a lot of work. You don't have to do that. You can cover it. You can cover it with at least 6 inches of mulch. You can cover it with sod or grass. You can block it off to make sure that kids stay out of that particular area. And then the other thing is to make sure that you just keep whatever contaminated soil you might run into outside. So if you work in those areas, be sure and take your shoes off when you go in the house. Take your clothes off and put them in the laundry. Wash your hands thoroughly, and basically keep your house clean. Keep the floors and windowsills and all of that clean and dusted, and that prevents outside lead contamination from getting into the house. Finally, and here's a little graphic from the EPA that just gives some of these tips. Finally, I wanted to talk about DC Water. I did contact them and ask, do you all test soil for lead contamination when you're replacing these lead service lines? Which is a great thing. I'm really glad that they're doing that. That's an important problem to address. But the response was that they don't, as a matter of course, test soil. I just don't know if they'd ever thought about it or worried about it. It was the first time anybody'd ever raised the issue with them. So I suggested that maybe in the future it'd be a good idea for them to just test the soil when they're replacing these service lines and see if there's any lead contamination. That way homeowners can know and can take steps to prevent lead exposure by their kids. So that's my video on soils. Please test your soils for lead, and I'll be in touch soon with a new video. I'm going to look at community gardens and soils next. Thanks all so much.